Sunday, September 14th, 2025. Where am I right now? I'm at my property here in Pass Creek, and I'm going to give you a tour, show you what it looks like. Some of you have been asking, what does my property look like in Pass Creek? Well, where I usually videotape from is from my mother's house. And a few videos ago, I showed you what my property looks like across the road from my mother's house. That one was a 2-acre spot. This right here is just a little bit over 9 acres. And I'll show you what it looks like and tell you a little bit of history about it and how we got it and what I've been doing with it and what my future plans are with it. So let's turn the camera around. Let's go for a tour. Here we are. This is looking south towards Castlegar, and my mother's house is about 2 miles or about almost 4 kilometers, maybe 3 down in that direction. So here it is. So when I actually got this property, it did not look at all like this. It was really, really rough looking. And I managed to clean it up. And we'll get back to those rocks. I'll tell you a story about that. And we'll talk about the sea can there. And we'll talk about all these trees here. So originally, this property, even though it's 9 acres right now, it was actually one big chunk of 300 acres. And a local sawmill, owned by Dukovor Russians, Kolesnikova, they purchased this property here, and it was actually all a forest. And what they did, they came in with their machines and they cut the trees down. And their intention after cutting down the trees was to subdivide it into lots, into, small acres. Actually, they're fairly large acres. Nothing smaller than 6 acres and all the way up to, I think, 14 or 15. And they were going to turn this into a subdivision for houses. So when I heard about it, that they're going to be subdividing it, that was back in 2004. And I thought, wow, what a great idea. I'm going to see if I can get a piece of this property. So I came up here, and now as a kid, I always came up here, walked through the forest with my friends. So, us kids in Pass Creek, we walked everywhere in the mountains and stuff. So I saw this exact spot. And it was actually just down over there, the spot that I wanted. And I said, I'm going to start clearing it. But it was not even sold yet. So I approached the sawmill company, and I knew the owner, Ken, and I asked them if I can start clearing the land. Because everything that was cut was left, and there were branches and stumps and stuff. And Ken asked me if... Actually, Ken told me, he said, well, why are you going to start clearing it? You don't even own it. And I said, well, I want to get a head start. And he said, well, what if you decide that you don't want it after you put all this work in? And I replied by saying, well, you guys will be able to make a profit on me, so you can sell cleared land. He's like, okay. So to basically cover themselves for insurance purposes, they asked me to sign a waiver, an agreement that if I injure myself, Kolesnikovs would not be responsible. I said, okay, fair enough. And where I was talking about was like this exact spot right where I'm pointing, because I wanted that view right there. Okay, so that was 2004. So the summer of 2004, summer of 2005, summer of 2006, summer of 2007, the 5th summer, 2008, that's when Ken called me up and said, okay, we're ready. We're ready for the selling of the property. But I already had a 5-year head start. So there it was. 5 years went by, and I was actually clearing it by hand. I was living in South Korea at that time, so when I would come home during my summer vacations, I would help my mom with her firewood and whatever work that she needed. And the extra time that I had, I was working on this project, even though I didn't own it. I was clearing it, thinking ahead. I'm going to own it. I was just determined. I'm going to own this property. So 2008 came, purchased it and then kept clearing it. So like even where we're standing right now, all this was just very, very rough. It did not look as smooth as this. It was just rough ground and trees are down and it just looked really, really bad. So my goal was every single day I would come up here and I would make one pile of brush and just pull it together. And it was probably 4 meters high by about 4 meters wide. So, and that was my goal. So if I was here for, let's say 20 days, 20 consecutive working days, I would make 20 piles. But as everybody knows, you cannot burn the piles in the summertime. So I was kind of stuck with the dilemma. What am I going to do? So I would pay friends to burn it for me in October, November, when it was the rainy season. So that was that. By 2011, I had this whole area cleared. And all these trees, they were very, very small. They were probably half a meter in height. So as I'm clearing, I'm like, oh, I like that tree. Oh, I like that tree. And I just kept them. And as you can see, they're like, I don't know, some of them are maybe 10, 12 meters in height. Or let's say this cedar right here. I mean, it just goes up and up. So anyways, in 2012, I purchased a backhoe, or in Russian, you guys call it an excavator. Why? Well, because there was nothing but stumps left. Everything was burnt off. My friends burnt it off. And there's nothing but stumps. So I'm like, okay, I need an excavator or a backhoe. I purchased the backhoe and came out here and started ripping out, like I call it, like wisdom teeth or like carrots. Ripping out all the stumps, leveling everything off. I'd go left, right, back and forth, clearing. And actually I did. I killed a few trees. They were small. I didn't see them. And you drive over them. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, well, whatever. It all turned out well. So that was that. And this area right over here, let's go back. I'm going to turn the camera around. It's much better instead of looking at my face. I'll show you what I had plans that actually include those rocks right over there. Let's turn the camera around. Okay, so this sand that you're looking at, this was not the sand that's on this property. I actually had this sand brought from my other property because there's a little bit of a slope. So you could see the gentle slope. And I was going to have a lawn space over here, but not angling. So gazon. And there was going to be a little road that would go right around here. And it would go back up. So like a horseshoe shape or a U shape. And the house is going to be right there. So if anybody comes in, they can just drive around and phase back to leave. And I thought, okay, I'm going to build a brick wall, not a brick wall, a stone wall that's going to be all around. So the year that I thought about that was, I think, 2012. And I went on YouTube, you know, the DIY, do-it-yourself. How do you make stone walls? I didn't know how to make a stone wall. So I started researching, and every time that I would find some information on a do-it-yourself, I learned that the first thing that people would say, the hardest part about building a stone wall is sourcing the rocks. I thought, okay. I'm not going to be building for a while, but I'm going to start collecting the rocks. And they have to be special rocks. So what does it mean by special? Let's turn the camera around, I'll explain it. So special rocks means that every rock that's going to be in your wall needs to have what's called a flat face. Okay, so let's say like this one, it's flat. This one is flat, nice and flat. There's another one flat. So every one of these rocks has a flat face. And my goal was to collect 250 rocks per trip up the mountain looking for rocks. So I would collect 250 and I wanted to collect 1,500 per vacation. So that means I had to go up a minimum of, what is it, 6 times up the mountain. And I did do that. So I ended up actually counting all the rocks that I was collecting. As I was up the mountains, it was basically the 4 service roads just on the side of the road, collecting all the rocks. And most of these are granite, so they have that nice kind of a speckly, sparkly look to them. So as I was collecting them, I would count. Okay, I'd be on the side of the road, I'd stop the truck and I'd walk along the road maybe about, I don't know, 50 feet or 100 feet from the truck. I'm like, oh, there's one. Oh, that one's the right one. And I'd throw 1, 2, 3. So if I'd pick them up with 2 hands to pick up 1 rock, that would be what I would call a 1 count. And I wanted to have many different sizes. So if I picked up 2 rocks, 1 in each hand, that was still a 1 count. So eventually it took me 7 summer vacations. And I finally stopped when I reached 11,000 plus. So there were more than 11,000 rocks right over here. And I figured, okay, well, that is enough, more than enough, for a rock wall that would kind of start kind of over here and would go around the trees. And this lawn space would be flat instead of on an angle. And there's extra rocks to make other rock walls. And also in the YouTube videos that do it yourself, they always said it's better to have more rocks than not enough, because you have more selection. So if you need a certain piece, you're looking for either a wide one or a square one or a red one, well, I have all my choices. So there it is. So I got all my rocks. All my rocks are ready. Like they say, they're not gonna rot. They are rocks. They are there. When people come up to the property, they're like, oh my God, this place used to be full of rocks and you cleaned all this up. And I say, no, there weren't enough rocks on this property. I had to bring rocks. So there's that. Now that over there is another pile of rocks. Let's go take a look and see why those rocks are over there and not over here with these. Well, you could see that these rocks are much larger than for my rock walls, and no, you can't lift them. They're really big, but the purpose was to cover my well, the colodius right here. I even put a post and I painted it. Well, I got to paint it again because it's fading, red and white, so that at nighttime you could see the white very clearly. In a winter time, you could see the red much clearer than the white. And it's just a post to mark that, hey, there's something here. And also with the backhoe, I brought these rocks and put them around the wellhead so that nobody would accidentally drive right onto my wellhead. There's also a little bit of a ditch right over here, which I also have covered. And I already have my irrigation, which stops right at this bucket. So I still would have to connect it to the well. And it goes like this and it kind of turns and right up to where the house is going to be. So yeah, this is already done. This was done 10 years ago. And now I just have it just as a safety so that nobody ends up driving into this ditch, or more importantly, right on top of my well. All right, let's go up to the sea can. I purchased this sea can back in 2020 and brought it up here. It's brand spanking new. There's a plaque right over here, and it says that it was manufactured in China, and the date of manufacture, it's kind of hard to see, was in June of 2020. I had it up here by December 1st. It was all done. So it was made in China. It was loaded up with whatever goods that were going to be transported, made it across the ocean to Vancouver. All the stuff that was inside were taken out, and then it was auctioned off. And my friend actually bought it because he sells these containers, and then he sold it to me. So here it is. It only made it once across the ocean. And check this out. It's made with what's called Corten steel. So corten steel is used for ocean shipping containers, so it slows down the rust that occurs with all the salt air. Well, there's no salt air here. It's sitting on top of boards, so it's not even touching the ground. Right here you could see, check that out right there. So it's sitting on some beams, and this thing will be here for a long time. It's not gonna rust. If it does, it'll take like 30 years for it to rust through. So yeah, it's sealed. I got it locked up. What do I have in there? Well, I just got rakes, shovels, just garden stuff that I use when I'm working up here. All right, let's go take a look at the forest now. All right, so here is the property line, and the property line actually runs like this right here. So this right here is already the neighbor's property, but before it was purchased from the sawmill company, I had an agreement, and I asked Ken at the sawmill, I said, can I cover or clear a little bit over onto the property that's not mine? And he was confused. He said, why do you want to do that? And I said, well, there are a lot of these pine trees. You can see like that. Many of them just lean over and fall because they are just too light. And what I wanted to do was make it further out so none of these pine trees would end up falling over onto my property. In addition to that, here's these Yolkia. Here's a fir tree, fir tree, fir tree, fir tree, and even that one right there is a big one. To give them more sun so they would start growing, so that when whoever buys this property would see these nice trees and they wouldn't do anything. They would leave them. Now, this forest that you see right here, it's all thick. Okay, what you see right here is what was right over here. Okay, so I wanted to create what's called a buffer zone. So there's my driveway where you drive in, and it looked like this right over here. So from this part all the way that way. So I couldn't come in here with my backhoe. So I was actually clearing this all by hand. I was pulling out like exactly the way you see it. Stuff that was on the ground and whatever, and I was cutting the pine trees and only leaving the cedars, the firs, and there's a few birch trees down over there. And then I brought in wheelbarrow loads of sand. That sand that you see, the big sand pile over there, I would come on the backhoe right over here, and then I would shovel sand from the bucket into a wheelbarrow, and I would bring it into here. Right here, you could see there's sand. And I had some topsoil that was also brought from my small property. So the sand was right there. I think there was something like 60 dump truck loads. A lot of it is already spread out. And right over there is the topsoil. I think there were about 15 or 16. So I would lay down the sand in any dips and little, depressions. And then I would put topsoil over top. And take a look, the grass actually started growing here. And it looks really, really good. So, here's the property line, and let's go and take a look. So, here we are, like this. And the line goes like that, but even this pine tree right here is not on my property. But it's on the other property, and I left it because it looked nice. But it's all thinned out. Otherwise, what would end up happening is you would have a place that looks like this. That would be right over there. And it's like, no, I don't want. Oh, check this out. Here is a larch. Listvinica. No, that's a fir. That's a Yolka. All right, my mistake. So what do I do to maintain this? Well, I actually take my lawnmower, I have an older lawnmower, and I end up cutting any of the thorns or any of the bushes that are growing. Here's one that I missed. I see why I missed it. Because there's a stump right over there, and I didn't want to come up too close, otherwise the blade would hit the stump. Here, maybe we'll just go like this. Ow. All right. So clearing everything off, making sure that everything remains open. Here's some little trees. Remember, I did not plant any of these trees. They just grow in areas where if I find them and I'm like, I like where it is. Say, for example, this one. This one has a lot of space around it. I'm like, okay, that one will grow. And if it's growing naturally, it's gonna grow just fine. Try plant a tree in a very good site where there's good soil. And sometimes even after watering it for 2-3 years, they don't grow. But this is what we say in Russian, Божья сила. It's just, if it's growing, it's gonna continue to grow. Here are the birch trees. Now, some of the birch are doing pretty good, and some of them are, I call them Charlie Brown. Like this one right here. The top is already kind of dying, but the center is still growing, so I'm still keeping it. And all along here, I have a really nice forest, and especially towards the fall, when the leaves start falling, and it looks really cool. Check that out. Nice forest. So much better looking than that right there. So, I don't know, I hope that the people that purchased this property, which appears that they haven't done anything to it, just sitting there, but maybe they will do the same what I'm doing, and we'll have this nice buffer zone that in the future you won't even be able to see the neighbors, because there's going to be a nice healthy forest between my property and their property. All right, moving on. Yeah, I had to cut this year right over here. You can see here some fresh cuts. So I cut, I'm not going to take that from the neighbor's property, but the trees fell and they were on my property here. So I had to come with a chainsaw. That was done just a few weeks ago. And this tree was all the way up to the road over there. So cleaned everything up and just trying to maintain it to make it look good. All right, here it is. Let's turn around and go the other way. So I do have power up in the property. Here it is. Here's a power pole, and I have what's called a service pole right here. So this property is already set up for a house, and even have the lawn space for it. So here are these cedar trees. There are 2 cedars right over here in this lawn and 3 fir trees. And I even trim the branches. You could see some fresh cuts. Here, we'll show you here. Check this out. So you could see that there are fresh cuts. And I cut the branches right there. And that's because these branches had the leaning. They were pointing down like this, and they were touching the ground. And anytime branches touch the ground, they end up turning red and they end up dying. Or just the tips turn red. And I figured, you know what? Keep it lifted up. It actually looks more cool. And like in Russian, you know, надо доглядать, you have to take care of it. But the result of it, you get this really nice look of well taken care of trees. Here's a listvinica right here. There's a larch. All right, let's move on. I'll show you where the house is going to be. Here it is. This is the location of where the house would be, or whenever it does get built. And check this out, the view. The view is amazing. Look at that. So Castlegar is just 10 minutes away from here. So you would be up here, you know, peace and quiet, yet very close to town. So I hired a company that came out here, because with my backhoe, I couldn't get through the rock. So only the outside area I was able to go, but the further you would come this way, it was hitting into the solid rock. So they actually came and they blasted out with dynamite. And then I hired another friend with a bigger excavator than mine, and he was able to lift a lot of these rocks and move them right over there. And then I hired some engineers that came, and they had to look at this sidewall right here, and they wanted to see how much water actually comes out, and that would determine the thickness that would be needed for the wall of the house on this side. But actually, there is no water that comes out. So they checked it, they tested it, and they said, okay, you are good to go. So here it is. The site is all prepared. And even check that out. There's like trees that are growing here. I don't plant them. It's, you know, the wind blows the seed, and right in the rock, they start growing. So every couple of years, I come and I just pull them out, because you know, it's much easier to pull them out when they're really small than when they start growing and they're 5 meters in height, and then try pull them out. You can't. So there it is. This is from another angle, looking at where the house will be. So it would be a 2-level house. Where we're standing right here, this is the walkout. So from the basement, you could just walk out right here onto the lawn. And from that side where you drive in into the car parking area, you're actually on the top floor. And that's that. So yeah, from the basement, you know, you're still going to be getting all the sunlight coming in, because it's called a walkout basement. And the view, again, amazing. Now, over here, we have these rocks. Probably wondering, why did I pile up these rocks? And if you notice, it's the only pine tree that I have in this entire area right over here, except in the forest. But everywhere that you look, it's either fir, larch, cedar, and one pine. Now, why would I have one pine and these rocks? Well, it's a simple answer to that question. When this property was being sold, it had to be under the code that they have for subdivision building. It has to be septic approved. So they hired a company to come in here and to dig what's called perk tests. They had to dig some holes and see if they're deep enough and if it's suitable for a septic system. So on this field right in here, after it was all logged out, there were all these big holes. So there were about 10 areas that were septic approved. So as I was clearing everything up, and I knew that the house was going to be in this location right here, and I thought to myself, you know what? I need to figure out where the septic would be, and it's an approved one. So I thought this would be the best spot right over here. So what I did was, to remember where it is, I ended up putting all these rocks. So I filled it up and put rocks on top, so that in the future, even if I'm not around and I explain to somebody, okay, I'm not at home or whatever, see where the rocks are, and the one pine tree that is behind it, right sitting below the rocks, that's where the septic is going to be. And then the rocks could be removed, take away all the soil, and there's the hole again. There it is, septic approved. So yeah, that is why I have one pine tree on this property with rocks right in front of it. Just so in the future, you know, being forward thinking, you know, it's much easier to figure out where's a good place to put your septic, because I know there was a hole there many years ago and I just marked it. And that's that. So the property is still cleared out right here. That area over there, I just don't have the time to cut the grass on that. This year, that's not done. But you can see what it looked like. So for comparison, in 1 year, if you don't cut the grass, that is what the field will look like. Right there, exactly like that. So I only managed to get up to here, and I'm like, okay, for this year, that's that. Next year, is it gonna grow more into a forest? No, but it will get a little bit thicker. It will take a little bit longer to cut through it, but I'll probably use a weed whacker, what we call, or you guys call trimmer in Russia. I'll have to go with the trimmer first, and then later with the lawnmower to get the nice level. But yeah, there it is. So if I would not have cleared this right here this year, after 1 year, it looks like that. So definitely this is looking much better when it's like this. Okay, so as we walk around here, I want to show you guys, here are these wires. This is like a circular right around all the trees. And there's another story to that, why I did put all this wire right around almost all the trees. Over 100 trees on the property have these wire right there, right around. The reason why there's a wire here like this, in 2020, so it was the summer of 2020 while I was here during COVID, and I came up here one day and I noticed that a lot of my trees were all scratched. And I was just like, what's going on? So I asked my neighbors, and even my neighbors said, yeah, some of our trees are all scratched up. So I went on the internet and I just did a search, just trying to figure out what would actually scratch the trees and what kind of an animal lives in this area. And the results that I got was that it was either a bear, which I ruled out because the scratches were not very high. They were quite low to the ground. And the second option was it was a badger. So I thought, okay, some of my trees were damaged beyond repair, because if they get scratched all the way around, they will end up dying. And I had about 4 or 5 trees that I actually had to end up cutting because they died the following year, and I lost them. So I thought, well, I'm going to put this chicken wire around them so that they can't get their claws, because it's going to be into the wire. And it seems to have worked, because the badgers did not return, if it was the badgers. But I don't think it was a bear, because the claw marks were maybe half a meter from the ground. If it was a bear, I mean, the bear can stand up and claw more. So, oh well. Okay, let's turn the camera around. I'll show you this pile of branches. So here it is, a pile of branches, and you could see last year's is already all dried out, and this is this year's. Am I going to burn it? No. Am I going to pay somebody to burn it? Nah, don't need to. Let it just sit there. Maybe next year I'll ask somebody and they'll burn it for me. And that's from all the trimming that I did all along here. So all the branches that I trimmed, had to put them somewhere. I figured, well, there it is. Just put them into a pile, like they say, отдельно, it's out of the way. And I don't know, maybe sometime in the future, we'll end up burning it. All right, moving along. These trees right over here, this is another story. I found these trees 2 summers ago. As I was cutting the grass, I'm like, oh my God, this thing right here was maybe 3 centimeters. Now it's probably about 10 or 11. And I left and put little rocks around it so I would know in the future not to cut the lawn, or to cut it when I'm cutting the lawn. And same with this one. I even brought in this rock so that sometimes when people come up and they turn around right over here, just in case if they drive forward, well, you know what, you're going to damage your car before you damage my tree. So yeah, and it's also basically, don't go any further, otherwise you will hit my trees. So eventually, how tall will these trees get? Well, I mean, there it is. I mean, that's cedar, but how many years will it take to get that tall? Well, let's take a look over here. That little tree right over there, that's about 7 years old. I don't do anything to it. It's just growing nicely. How about this one right here? This big listvinica. It is about 12 years old, maybe 15. So they're not that old. This one right here is about 7. So if that one is 7 years old and this one is 2 years old, well, look how much sun it's going to get. And it's not fighting for water with anything else that's around it. So when it rains, there's no other plants that are saying, we need the water, we need the water. The roots get all the water, and this thing gets all the sun. And probably in a few years, it's going to look like this. And eventually, it could even grow like that. So very, very healthy. There it is. All right, let's talk about those sheds. Back in 2021, I decided that I need more storage space. And I figured, well, you know what? I'm going to build one out of wood instead of having a sea can. I don't know, this will be kind of more natural, kind of blend in into the forest. So that's what I did. I not only built one, I built two. And so that when I come here, same thing. Just if it starts raining or whatever, or if I want to take a break, I got a table in there and chairs, and I just sit and, wait for the rain to stop or whatever. But yeah, I built that with my friend Andy DeRosa. And there it is. Here's my fire pit. So this is where last night I had a few friends that came over, and in the evening we had a little fire pit going, and even my mother was up here. We were singing songs, Russian songs and English songs, and all that wood right there, that firewood, well, that's all from the property here. So if there's a dead tree anywhere in the forest right over there and I find it, I bring it over, cut it up, stack it up, and it's for my little fire pit. Well, we've almost come full circle. We got one last thing to talk about here. And I do have a small creek that's on the property here. It's just in the bushes here. So this creek, it's more of a seasonal creek. Right now it's not flowing. But if you take a shovel or take the backhoe and just start digging down, the water is just below the surface, probably maybe like half a meter. Let's go through it, I'll show you. Okay, so moving along here. So here's where it flows, actually right along here. It goes up this way. So in the springtime, yeah, if you were walking through here, you would be in water. It would be flowing, but it dries up, and that's fine. Here you can see there's more moisture right here. Right here, here it is. So if you take a shovel and just dig down through here, the water is just below the surface. And all these trees right here, they were really, really small. And you could see that they're nicely spaced. So, when was that? Around 2008, 2009. I actually went through here with my chainsaw. And the trees were, let's say, like this birch, this biroza right here. They were all very, very small. And they were so close together that they were not growing. So I thinned it out so that they get more sunshine, more water, because there's less of them, and they will be more healthy. So any of the birch trees that were crooked, they're leaning over, I'd be like, no, I don't want that. And I cut them down, but they were easy to cut because they were like this one right over here. They were really small and you could easily cut them and move them away. But now everything is going good, and perhaps I will do another deep dive into here and clean everything up. But it's a very, very big job, very time consuming. But the cool thing is that the forest will be healthy. I mean, look at this birch right here. Look at that, nice and healthy. So I want to have a birch forest right through here. And of course, on the sides, you got the cedar. They're getting all the water because this is where this seasonal creek goes through. And I actually did make a road that actually goes right down in there, so I can bring in my backhoe through here anytime. Okay, so yeah, this forest is really nice and cool to walk through here. Cool as in temperature wise, and cool as in it looks really nice. So let's go back here. Okay, out of the forest, there's pretty much the whole walking tour. My sheds over here, if you take a look, they're actually hidden. So what I did was the branches that are close to the shed, I actually cut them so the branches would not touch the sheds. But on the outside, I still leave them. And sort of like the plan is in the future, as the trees keep getting bigger, these sheds will end up being covered up. You won't even see them, but yet the branches are not touching the sheds. Here, I'll show you what they actually look like. All right, here it is. So check this out. There's no branches right here that can actually touch. Same with right here. See, all these branches are out. I'm going to this tree right here. Now, those branches, yeah, they're higher. They're going to be higher than the roof. But anything that's lower, so you could see that there were branches that were right here. So anything going away from the shed, I keep. Anything coming toward the shed, I cut it down. In addition to that, if we look at the roof line, so when the snow will be coming down, if there would be branches over here, the snow is going to fall onto the branches. It's going to break the branches, and the tree is going to be sick because it has broken branches. But in this case, the snow won't right down without hitting the branches. Okay, so there it is. Let's take one last look. I call this my Zaimka. So for those of you that live in Khabarovsk and know where the Zaimka is, you know exactly what I mean. There it is. Check that out. Very, very nice. This is why I like coming up here. It's so peaceful, yet I'm very close to town. And I don't know, it's just my go-to space where I can go to and relax. Those big trees right there are also on my property. So my property ends probably another 30 meters past those big trees. So yeah, it's just over 9 acres, or if you want to call it, let's say sotki. If there are 40 sotki in 1 acre, how much would that be? So that would work out to 360 sotik, because 40 sotiks for 1 acre, there are 9 acres, a little bit more than 9.1 something. Let's just call it 9. So 9 times 40 is 360. So just to compare to, you know, my dacha in Khabarovsk, which is 30 sotiks, and this one here is 360. So yeah, it's big. It's big. It's I don't know, 9 times, 8 times, whatever. That's big. All right. Okay, I got to get going. Thank you for coming along on this video. I don't know if you're still watching this. Well, I guess it was an interesting video. I don't know. I just kind of want to give a thorough on what my property looks like and explain. That's the thing. Instead of just showing and saying, here it is, kind of gives you a story, a timeline on what I did. You know, I didn't just come here and it was already looking like this. No, I really put a lot of sweat and tears, a lot of hard labor into this place to make it look like this. And you guys are probably wondering, okay, when's he moving back? Is he going to be living in Russia or in Canada? Honestly, I don't know. I like my life in Russia right now. Things are good. I got my family there. Who knows? Maybe sometime in the future might say, well, we're going to make a summer house here and come here in the summertime and live up here. I don't know. Maybe I will never end up building here. That's fine too. Maybe I will give this to my sons and they will come to Canada and they'll say, we want to live here. And they have property, because property is very expensive for one, and especially good property is very difficult to find. And I feel blessed that I don't have one. I actually have 2 spots. And if I ever do come here, I have my power that's already here. There's the pole. Power is here. Water is here. Everything is all landscaped. Even the site for where the house is, I don't need to do any blasting. Just start building. So there it is. Okay, I gotta go. If you like this video, smash the like button, leave a comment. If you're not a subscriber, hey, it doesn't cost anything. It's free. So you can subscribe. And until the next video, like I always say, paka paka.